Zanna,
Miranda.
today we talk about bringing the energy.
Yes.
It's part of a podcast series where we talk about behaviors that are important for C-level leaders, for successful human-centric transformation. And it's linked to your book, right? Let's start with the book. Can you tell a little bit more about it?
Yeah, so the book launched officially in January of this year. I was thinking because I also need to think when we post this podcast, but it will be still this year. And it sort of captures, let's say, all the lessons learned in the last 25 years. And it's more of a manual, a guide for both the CEO and the CX leader. Okay, so how do I do that successfully, right? Human-centric CX transformation. There's a lot of, different perspectives on how to run CX. A lot of teams are struggling. And what I created in the book is a 3-layered model. So there are 3 layers to do that successfully. And the last one is all about inspiring meaningful transformation.
Yeah.
And that's a manual of 21 behaviors, again, both for CEO and for the CX leader. And each behavior, so you can sort of sift through it and see, hey, these are behaviors that I'm not experimenting with yet. And with each behavior, we also have one tiny habit. If you want to start experimenting, just as inspiration, here is one tiny habit.
Yeah, nice. And the podcasts are for a deep dive on some of these behaviors. Today, bring the energy. Why is bringing the energy important?
Yes, I was thinking when I was driving to the studio this morning, I think it's one of the last behaviors. And for me, that's for a reason, right? Because I think bringing the energy is really about, it's twofold. It's about you, right? The person running the transformation. And it's about, okay, but how do I inspire the whole organization to be energized to go somewhere on a journey with me, right? And I think maybe on a more philosophical level, right? There are so many employees that feel like disengaged, right? When they enter a company, they put on sort of, okay, now I have my corporate hat on.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's just a really sort of strong drive inside of me to say, hey, but you can have fun during this transformation. It can be meaningful. It can be purposeful. Yes, we can make a difference, right? It's challenging, but let's go on this journey together. And I think that energy, right, resonates a lot with employees because it's not only feeling different, but they actually see that the impact is different. So I think that that's a super crucial ingredient for any leader looking to transform anything, if it's a small level or the whole organization. I think you really need to be aware about, and bring the energy doesn't mean that you have to be like super hyper like me, right? There are different ways of bringing the energy.
Yeah.
But it just has to be authentic, right? So what is your energy? Why are you driving this transformation?
Yeah.
What does it mean to you, right? So those are all relevant topics that we will dive into today.
All right. So you already mentioned it's about your personal energy, but also how do you mobilize the whole organization? Let's start with the personal one. Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so I think it really starts with you. So this is one of the... I think we did like 7 or 8 series on specific behaviors, and all the previous behaviors are connecting back to this one, right? So a very big one is all about finding your purpose. Mm-hmm. So what does this transformation mean to you? I don't know, let's say your organization wants to become more digital. There has to be, at least for me and for employees to feel energized, there has to be like a deeper meaning behind that, right? We want to become more digital because we can service our customers better. Or because otherwise the competition might win. Or in a government organization, we also recently had a beautiful conversation about to be even more human-centric, you need to have smart use of AI, right? To, let's say, automate the stuff that is repetitive and then have more time to engage on a human level.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important for you driving this transformation, whether you're the CEO, the CTO, the CX lead, what resonates with you. And I think that's one side. And also really reflect, okay, what is my authentic DNA? So indeed, am I the one who's excited to, present to the whole organization, create a lot of energy? Am I more the person who likes to be in the background and facilitate others? So I think it's crucial to find your authentic way in driving transformation.
Yeah, because people will feel that, right?
People will feel that. And also I think there's not one good way to
Yeah.
do things. I think it also depends on the type of organization, the existing culture. So that also connects back to, let's say, the first layer of the book, right? It's about speaking the language. And for me, speaking the language also goes to, let's say you're working with your leadership team, understand their context,
Yeah.
right? So, okay, I'm maybe super energized by, I don't know, coming up with a gazillion new ideas. While somebody else might feel, hey, but let's say our board is really steering on financials. So how do we balance still meeting short-term goals with this longer-term transformation? Are we even aligned on the approach to take to transformation? So I think it's important for you to bring your own energy and assess that, okay, what do the others need in this transformation? And how can we bring all those different types of energy together to really, I don't know, create liftoff for the transformation that you want to achieve?
Yeah. Yeah, nice. All right. So the second part, mobilize the organization. How do we do that?
On a long list of super cool ideas. So I think also here, connecting back to the book, I think there are two parts. So you have, let's say, the hard steerable side of transformation.
Yeah.
And you have, so the numbers side, and you have more the soft side, behaviors. And I think what's often lacking is it's an either or, right? Either people or methodologies only go for the hard numbers and then they lose the human aspect, or they are overly focused on the human aspect and you lose a lot of people that feel it's way too fluffy, right? Where are the numbers?
Yeah, you have to balance, right?
You have to balance, right? So that's on, let's say, on the hard numbers, we've been working on figuring out how can we translate this fluffy experience thing into hard steerable data. That's where driver mapping comes in, right? If you're curious, there's a whole lot of podcasts on that. But the essence is that we figured out a way to use statistics to really figure out, okay, for example, enhancing personal attention will increase your satisfaction or NPS 5 times faster than, let's say, fixing the ease of use of the app. And by using those statistics, we've been able to now say, okay, we are, let's say, on the same level of you're steering on revenue, you're steering on costs, and hey, now I have this hard steerable thing called experience. So now you have a better conversation to balance priorities.
Yeah.
So I think that's really relevant on the hard side. And also you have to prove in a short amount of time that you can actually increase things.
Yeah, talking about energy, when you see increasing the numbers, it brings energy, right?
Yeah, you can. I think it's twofold. It's already enhancing the energy of the people that were excited already. Hey, we started improving on personal attention and we see satisfaction increase, which we saw every time within 3 months.
Yeah.
And you also have proof for, let's say, the non-believers. Hey, look, actually this is working. So you create more space. I've always believed also just, in my career that as long as you prove your value, you create freedom. So then maybe when you prove that it increases, maybe you won't have convinced all the people, but at least you're creating the freedom for them to say, okay, I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, exactly.
And you don't need more than the benefit of the doubt to go.
Yeah, nice. All right. So measuring this and energize people, it's not enough to just measure like CSAT or NPS, right?
No, and I think also maybe just one sidestep indeed for next to the hard stuff, right? You have the soft stuff, behaviors, energy. And I think a lot of transformation programs struggle to measure that.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you should not measure that. I'm saying you should. And things on how you can measure it is, for example, so we really love working with volunteers, right? Creating a campaign of getting a lot of employees excited to say, okay, I want to be part of the Tiny Habits program. Let me experiment. And then a very easy metric is what's the percentage of employees that actually joins your voluntary experimentation. Because the bare minimum you want to have is 10% of all the employees. We tend to be between 30 and 60%.
It's a good campaign, right?
It's an amazing campaign. You can read all the details in the book if you want to, right?
Yeah.
Explain everything if you want to do it yourself, right? That's the habit hacking approach. So just experiment with it and see how it works. But that's one way of measuring it. It's also a way to measure. So what we did in one other organizations where we created a baseline before we ran this, Tiny Habits behavior program. You can either use your existing statements in, for example, employee engagement research, or create just a few questions specifically to the tiny habits that you're experimenting with. Do a baseline measurement, run tiny habits for 3 or 4 months, and measure again.
Yeah.
And also there we saw that I think like 95% of people were saying this habit is super valuable. It actually had an impact on, for example, my sense of workload. So yes, also the soft, fluffy thing in the behavior side you can measure for sure.
Yeah.
The number of tiny habits that people have been experimenting with, just collecting their feedback, how valuable it was to them. So I think those two sides are, how do I not only bring the energy, but also keep track of, are we making an impact?
Yeah.
And I think this is probably where you wanted me to go on measuring. So this all connects to your perspective on running successful transformation. And let's say the old school way of doing it is probably like a 3-year roadmap. We need to become more customer-centric. We need to become more digital. We need to fail fast, right? That's the other recent hype. We make a 3-year roadmap, and especially now with, companies have been saying this all along, right? The world around us is changing faster, but right now it's crazy fast, right? With all the developments. So just making this 3-year plan, first of all, you don't know where you will be in 6 months or 12 months, right?
Yeah.
So it's too rigid. It also a way that companies have been doing it for so many times where employees feel like, oh, here we go again. Because how many times have those transformations failed? You're sort of steering into a black box. So often you're saying, okay, we want to become more customer-centric. This is our 3-year roadmap. But during those 3 years, I have no idea if we're moving in the right direction. Yes, I'm measuring satisfaction. Maybe I'm measuring NPS. But I'm not measuring, is literally the inside of our organization.
Yeah.
Is that changing, right? Am I seeing different behaviors? Are we seeing more stories that are in line with the transformation that we want to make?
Yeah. Are people really engaged?
Are people really engaged?
Yeah.
Are they co-creating this together? So for me, that links to another podcast that we recorded about adaptive transformation. There's also a very interesting HBR article about that. Google it. And the idea is that we want to move away from the old way of doing transformations. And I'm saying old between quotes because, let's be honest, that's the existing way of doing it. Right? Those were the examples I mentioned. 3-year roadmap, not a lot of energy, not a lot of flexibility to respond when things are changing. And adaptive transformation is all about, okay, yes, I still have this endpoint, but I'm sort of, learning and improving as I'm going along.
Yeah.
And as long as I'm doing that consistently, right? The same with tiny habits. If I'm stacking new behaviors, actually I'm transforming, right? Exponentially.
Yeah.
Not because I'm moving 3 years ahead. No, because each quarter we have a direction. Let's say I want to do something indeed with tiny habits about becoming more customer-centric. And I think this is also a bridge to, you really have to understand, when am I measuring what to be in the driving seat of transformation. So you have to choose, you have to be aware of what are my lagging indicators and what are my leading indicators of transformation. So of course there's revenue, there's reduction of cost, there is being more innovative, more experimental, right? That's no debate. Any organization has to get there.
Yeah.
So that's really the outcome of everything. But then a lot of companies, especially on the experience side, are measuring NPS, satisfaction, employee engagement. And they are results, right? They are outcome metrics, but they don't put you in the driving seat of, right? So, okay, now I see that satisfaction is a 7.8. Great.
Yeah.
Now what?
No idea why.
No idea why. So I always say in that part, that's where customer experience fits in. And the addition there from all the driver analysis that we've done is that you need to add the human aspect, right? So everybody's working on making things easier, making it digital, making it faster. And yes, you have to be on par, but that's not what will create a really amazing experience. The amazing part is always the human aspect, the emotional parts. And yes, you can do that with technology, right? It doesn't have to be a human to create a human experience. So I think with designing from those human drivers, you are already more in the driving seat than if you are just, let's say, fixing the basics, fixing the hygiene. But you're still on the outcome, right? You're still not leading. Then, let's say, the level before, what is driving these outcomes is behaviors. Behaviors of employees, behaviors of leaders. And what is driving those behaviors is incentives, right? KPIs. So now you're already preceding the outcome, but you're still sort of in the middle. So this is also where employee experience fits in, right? What are my habits? How am I daily being steered? Do I feel inspired? Do I understand the vision where we're going? But the step before that, right, the real leading part is, okay, but what does the organization system look like? What do our values look like as a company? What is our strategy? And to me, that's where transformation experience fits in. So are you consciously thinking about how am I designing the transformation journey itself?
Yeah.
And that's where all the elements of adaptive transformation fits in, right? So how do I have a baseline measurement, a follow-up measurement? Okay, if I want to become more customer-centric, how many stories are we collecting where employees can say, if you ask them, okay, in the last 2 weeks, just think back, when did you see some examples, positive or negative, of our company being customer-centric? And that's your baseline. And you can track how customer-centric is it. Was it a positive or a negative example? And how impactful was that story for me as an employee, right? As an example. So let's say in the baseline, I have, 50% of stories are negative with a high impact. Okay, then now I can start tracking. I can do my interventions and see, hey, next quarter, are we getting more and more stories that move in the direction of getting more positive, high impact stories? So that is how you can track transformation, right? It's measurement, and that's where the beauty of AI comes in, because now you need a balance of qualitative stories and quantitative insights. And this was not possible because if you just talk to 10 customers, then the organization says it's just 10 customers, right? That's why we developed all those driver analysis to have much more numbers. But now with AI, you can say, okay, I'm inviting 2,000 employees to share their stories, run their stories through AI, and I have beautiful, rich insights. So for me, that combination is really powerful. And then the other side is, okay, tiny habits connected to that, right? So I have a baseline, and I think what's really important there, also connecting to bringing the energy. So when we were thinking about how can you run this transformation tracking, how can you collect stories, pretty quickly the challenge of psychological safety pops up.
Yeah.
If there's a culture where people feel, I don't really feel okay to share a true story. And I think one beautiful way, because it's all about framing. I mean, of course, people need to trust you, right? That's the basic. But we cannot fix that, right? That's a deeper issue in your culture if that's not the case. But I think a beautiful way of framing it, remember how we always talk about the organization system. So what you can say is, hey, we don't want to collect stories about you being customer-centric or not. We want to collect stories to understand what is blocking or enabling you to be customer-centric.
Yeah.
Because now it's not about Miranda doing a good or a bad job. No, it's about how is the organization facilitating Miranda. And if in all the stories you see, hey, all the team leaders are, I'm just making it up, right? All the team leaders are pushing really hard for production numbers. Okay, then that teaches us, hey, we might need to, next to our tiny habits intervention, maybe we need to design an additional intervention to work with the team leaders. And for me, that combination is really strong and puts you in the driving seat of transformation. So for me, it was really when I was brainwaving. I've been brainwaving on this, I think, almost in parallel with the book, but that I only recently realized after I published the book. Hey, I've also been working on that topic. And next to that, we said, okay, the driver analysis I really wanted to create to put you in the driving seat of experience, right? Making customer experience and employee experience way less fluffy. The same is that with this approach, you are in the driving seat of transformation, right? Twofold. You can actually start monitoring, hey, are we moving in the right direction? Are we getting better stories? But also you can collect those stories and figure out what interventions do I need to add? Do I need to change? Do I need to strengthen, right? To keep moving and accelerating transformation.
Yeah. Sounds great.
I think so too.
So when I'm listening to this podcast or watching this podcast as a leader, how do I start tomorrow?
I would say step one is reflection, right? I think step one is really for you to pause and think, okay, why does this transformation matter to me? I think that's step one.
Yeah.
Let me try to keep it at 3.
Okay.
And I think once you understand your own purpose, right, your own reason of wanting this transformation, I think it's really powerful to have that same exercise collectively with your senior leadership team. And right, for everybody to do the same reflection.
Yeah.
And then see, okay, are we aligned? I think that's one beautiful conversation to have. And then also ask each other, hey, what is blocking us or what could accelerate this transformation? Again, thinking about, okay, we might want to become more customer-centric, but we have to deal with a board that wants super short-term results. And that will not change, right? So how, as a group, can we manage that transition? I think that's an important one. So that's the second one. So that collectively you feel, okay, this is the purpose that we can express, each one of us, in our own way, right? So we have different ways of being energized and energizing others. But the storyline is the same towards the organization. I think so many senior leadership teams are perceived as being completely not in sync, which is not helpful. And then I think the third, let me think, what's the third? I think connecting back to the other behaviors that we've done the podcast on is all about courage, right? It's an unknown journey that you're about to embark on, not only internally, right? Because while you are transforming internally, you don't have all the answers, right? You want to listen, you want to learn, you want to collect insights and be flexible. Because in parallel, also your outside world is changing, right? So I think embracing your courage to listen to employees, to say, I don't have the answer. Yes, we're moving in that direction, but maybe we need to go to the left, maybe we need to go to the right. And also have the courage to, yes, acknowledge there are maybe short-term results, right, which you can enhance by the examples we just saw. Yes, you can increase satisfaction fast. But also stand up for this human-centric dream, this human-centric culture. Right? Don't, let's say, at the first challenge of, oops, the numbers are maybe not as good as we thought, drop everything. Right? So yes, acknowledge we need to prove in the short term also that this human-centric thing is adding to the business results. But have the courage to keep sort of pushing back, I would say a loving pushback to keep people on the journey of, hey, remember, this is why we want to embrace a more human-centric approach.
Yeah. And also in line with that, start small, experiment, learn along the way, as you said before.
Yeah. And always so, yes, start small, right? Indeed, start with, 10% of employees running tiny habits, but always also we've worked a lot with organizations that have presence in multiple countries. And I often get the question, let's say from a group perspective, hey, let's roll it out across all the countries. And then my advice is always to don't do that, right? Start in one country. But with everything you develop, keep in the back of your mind that you're developing something that you can scale to other countries.
Yeah.
That you can scale to other departments if you're not in multiple countries. Right? So start small, but always keep the scaling design in the back of your head.
Yeah. Nice. I think we covered it all.
Oh my God.
Any last words before we wrap it up?
No, I also believe that we covered most of it. So, I think connecting back to bring the energy, for me, it's really, I think it starts with knowing yourself, I think, right? What is your DNA? What brings you energy? And being open and willing to also connect with others who have a different way of bringing their energy and bundling that together. And you can do amazing stuff.
Nice. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.